Okay, I have 6:30. I'm calling the meeting to order. At this time, I will ask the treasurer to say the roll. The sheet that I just lost.
Mrs. Best.
Present.
Mrs. Davis.
Present.
Mrs. Hudson.
Present.
Mrs. Lloyd.
Present.
Mr. Wilson.
Here. I want to thank you all for being here. Welcome to our board meeting, and we've got a great event on tonight, which is we get to recognize some of our awesome students and staff. We're looking forward to that. But first of all, let me welcome or do introductions of the people who are up here. On your far right over here is Board Member Kelly Davis. Next to her is Board Member Jennifer Best. On my left, to the right for you is our treasurer, TJ Cusick. I'm Charlie Wilson, board president for this year. To my right, to your left here is our superintendent, Dr. Trent Bowers. Next to him is our board vice president, Nikki Hudson. And next to her is Amy Lloyd, board member. At this time, would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. At this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda of the board as it was sent out to the public on Thursday and posted on board docs.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We approve the agenda. I'm not aware of any changes. Does anyone have any changes or comments about the agenda? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Best.
Yes.
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson.
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes, motion passes. Okay, at this time, as I said already, this board's most favorite activity, well, maybe attending graduation commencement might be our most, but this is real close to it, is honoring our students and our staff. So at this time, I would certainly entertain a motion to recognize the students and staff who participated in the Undesign the Red Line project.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the motion. Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis.
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson.
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd.
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Mrs. Best.
Yes.
Motion passes, and I must say, earlier last week, my wife and I went to the exhibition at the old Worthington Library. It's awesome, so thank you all for doing it. This time I'll turn it over to Vice President Nikki Hudson.
Thank you. Making sure it works. Excellent, excellent. Thank you everyone for joining us tonight. You know, when we think about the benefits of public education, some of us think about the fundamental importance of ensuring that we have educated citizens. Others may think about the fact that public education is where students from different backgrounds with different abilities sit side by side and learn from each other, giving rise to the promise of social progress. And today we celebrate both of those and another dimension of public education, and that is those students get to share their learnings with us and educate the greater community. What these students that we and teachers and staff that we are celebrating tonight have done is truly remarkable. And if you haven't had the opportunity, as you learn more about the exhibit tonight, I hope that you will visit. But at this time, we'll celebrate 9 students from Linworth Experiential and 2 students from Worthington Kilbourne High Schools in collaborations with their teacher, Roseanne Nagel and Ian Sample, who completed a summer internship with the Kirwan Institute of The Ohio State University, Otterbein University, Erase the Space, Worthington Libraries, and the Worthington Historical Society. And their work is on display right now as part of a traveling exhibit entitled Undesign the Red Line. At this point, could I ask Roseanne and Ian to join me up here, and then we will invite all of the students as well. So we'll start by a round of applause for the two of you. One, but then I would like to turn it over to you and invite the students to share their contributions to the project and perhaps you could give an overview of the project and then they can hear their contributions. Is that something? Excellent. So if you're here tonight, if you will join us on right here. Eleanor Keener, Elijah Krause, Ella Quatlin Nolan, Elliot Rogers, Eva Bodie, Tia Guyman, thank you. Lucia Castle Ramirez, Aiden Smith, Zoe Knapp, and Rachel Ogden. Trust me that what you're getting ready to hear is worthy of
We, first of all, want to say thank you for the recognition and thank you to all the partners who invited the students to work with us. We were fortunate just because of the course that we offered at Littleworth to be in touch with. Benatini works through Ohio State at the Pearl Institute, and then Eric Birch with the Race of Space. And they approached us about further pursuing knowledge about urban development and racial justice, but also just development in our local history. And so we were fortunate to be able to work through the summer and really look at Worthington's place in the story and education connected to the story. And it was really awesome for the students to be able to, work in a different way. Work in a more, I hesitate to say authentic way, but a more cool way, and work with different partners. Yeah, I was thinking, okay, I don't know if I'm actually, I'm going to just use my teacher voice because, okay, so we were really fortunate that the students were able to work in what is really more of a realistic way. Different partners researching, the collaborators coming together, something didn't work, pursuing a different path, and evaluating the value of different pieces of this puzzle. And they did a great job. So I'll turn this over to Ian, see if there's anything else to add. But then the students, just FYI, just tell us about your topics, okay?
All right, yeah, I'm not going to add too much. I obviously want to thank Derek and Glennon. It was really their project, and we were fortunate enough to be connected to it. And I also want to thank Toya for making that initial connection in the first place. If you hadn't been in to see our class, I don't think that this would have ever happened. And then I just want to thank all of these guys too for being open-minded and jumping into this. And there were times where I think it was confusing and they were a little lost on what to do, but that's just kind of real life sometimes. And that's how new projects are a lot of times. It's just a lot of figuring it out as we go. So if you guys want to just really quickly, you could just give a quick 10, 15 second overview of the topic that you focused on.
Hi, my name is Henry, and I kind of work in a team with Ellie to focus on the 1968 land swap between Worthington and Columbus. It had a lot of, it changed a lot with the city boundaries and school boundaries, and is one of the reasons why Worthington has permanent boundaries today. So that's what we did. Do you have anything to add?
I'm Ellie. I did that with Henry, and then I also did a little bit of Photoshop and background creation with Elijah and Lucia.
My name is Elijah. I did school feeder patterns. I did it partially with Ella.
I'm Ella. I did the feeder patterns and a little bit of busing with Elijah.
I'm Elliot, and I focused on how Worthington schools are more racially diverse than Worthington City.
I'm Lucia, and I looked at records of experiences of Black students in Worthington, so looking at old newspapers, things like that. And then in addition to that, I did do some of the Photoshop stuff.
I'm Aiden. I went through old census records and did some dot placing on maps to see like where exactly the concentrations of people were living exactly, so we could get an idea where exactly everything was divided up into and how those areas correlate to what's going on today.
Thank you. The Undesign the Red Line project is can currently be viewed at the Old Worthington Public Library, and it's going to be on exhibit until October 31st at that particular location, and then it will continue to travel locally. It explores, as you've heard, the history of structural racism caused by the 1930s federal red line maps, which color-coded U.S. cities by their level of security for real estate investments, and obviously had a very broad ripple impact that is still prevalent today. So what amazing accomplishments on behalf of the entire Board of Education. Honestly, I have goosebumps right now. Thank you for your willingness to step into the space of the unknown, and as was expressed, perhaps things were bumpy along the way, but that is absolutely like real life is. And the work that you have done will absolutely benefit the entire community and educate us at large. So thank you very much. Huge round of applause. We're going to pass out some certificates as a small token of our appreciation and congratulations for your work, and maybe we can get a quick photograph. I would like to invite Glennon to join us for the photograph because Glennon Sweeney, please come on up here with us. Glennon has been mentioned. Glennon is a local resident, parent, and works with the Kirwan Institute at The Ohio State University and was instrumental in bringing this project to us. So thank you, Glennon. Truly, we're grateful for you and you bringing this opportunity to our students holistically. You want to go? You want to go? I was just like, yeah. We'll balance out the. We can squeeze. Fantastic. Huge round. Thank you very much. Yes, no, please. Would you, Glennon, do you want to plug the event on Wednesday? This is an important follow-up.
If you want to learn more about the exhibit, we are actually having 2 community conversations as part of the Big Table. That is a region-wide event this Wednesday. So they're both preceded with a tour, a guided tour of the exhibit to teach you some history as well. So the first one is at 10 a.m. with the tour, 11 to 12:30 for the conversation at the Old Worthington Library. Second one, 6 o'clock for the tour, 7 to 8:30 for the conversation. And you can come for just the tour or the conversation or both.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you
again. Yeah.
Well, thank you again, students, and I would urge everybody to go to it and go when you have plenty of time. It's a deep, enriching experience. My wife and I spent almost 2 hours there, and we want to go back again. Just so much there to absorb. So thank you. This, by the way, is a good time for anybody who wishes to leave. You are certainly very welcome to stay for our meeting. But this is kind of a convenient time for you to step out if you want to go off and do some more inquiry-based learning. All right. Chance to get their certificates. Yeah, I'm going to give them a chance to hand it out here. What's that? Oh, no speakers? No speakers. Oh, okay. Well, then better yet. Okay, I've been advised we have no speakers, so we'll move on to the first reading of the Neola policy updates. I believe the policy committee members will be doing making the presentation with respect to the first reading. So
Absolutely. And Kelly and I will tag team on this one, and obviously Mr. Banks will join us as he always does. But a majority of the changes that you have in front of you are legal changes and ones that were required. So we're merely updating our policy to reflect the current state of the law. And there were a few that we decided to table pending potential clarification to legislation. So a majority on the front, you'll see are either policy as marked or, we've decided to table it for the time being and there's no further action to take at this time. The ones that we really wanted to bring to the meeting this evening for discussion are on our second page, and those are policy number 8210, 8330, and then 9211 and 9270. So the first one, 8210, relates to school calendars, and I'll give everyone a moment to go through their stack and pull out that one so that we have it in front of us. Everyone, including me. And I think honestly, this one, it wasn't so much of a discussion standpoint, we wanted to make sure that our administrators were comfortable with the language that's been included. And it essentially is a policy that revised when we have inclement weather and a situation where we can't go to school. We used to have what were they, snow day packs? Say it again.
Blizzard bag.
Blizzard bag, there we go. I knew it was something like that. Basically, it was an old school pack of paper, right? that our families could access or pick up or our students could work from. And now that we've weathered a pandemic, we're moving on from blizzard bags, and this now provides us with the opportunity to use the electronic means of the online teaching that we have now become familiar with as a result of the pandemic to accommodate and continue education during those situations where we have emergency closings. So, Randy, when you followed up with our administrators, was everyone comfortable with this language?
I believe they met as a team to discuss this because could be used for a variety of reasons. The schools are closed, but it also has some requirements within that, and it's for up to 3 school days in order to make up. So I believe our directors met today to talk about those.
Okay. And Emily,
Mrs. Hudson, we're comfortable.
You're comfortable with it? Okay. So as long as no one here has any questions, then we would propose that we accept it or have our first reading today as it's currently marked up. Okay, wonderful. And then 8330 relates to school records. And then as you'll see, this update changes the time frame for forwarding student records within 5 school days. It allows us to withhold it if they have a certain amount of outstanding debt. And obviously legal, indicates that legal counsel should be consulted when that's made for special education records for a student with disabilities. Again, this was one that we were just ensuring that our administration was comfortable with. I see a lot of nodding heads and no concerns, so I think I feel comfortable saying then, again, we would propose that we have a first reading today with this as marked, and unless anyone has any questions, we can move to the next one. Okay. The next two, TJ, you were kind enough to provide an email to myself and Kelly, to me and Kelly, on the financial implications related to these. So 9211 is district support organizations. Optional language has been added stating that school employees and board members, if we were to accept it as drafted, will not manage or have access to funds of a district support organization or serve as a voting member or officer of the organization. And there was some concern that this language could prohibit, officers who are employees who are potentially officers of PTAs, for example, from functioning as an officer in that capacity. TJ, do you want to state a bit further for
Sure. The
board at large?
So I think one of the first policies that were recommended for update today had to do with conflict of interest. That was 142, I think. And that in a similar way is inside of what they're advising here. So the IRS, I'd say within the last 5 or 6 years, has really heightened awareness around conflict of interest for 501c3 organizations, which most of our booster groups are. There's more disclosure, there's questions on tax returns. And so what Neola is attempting to do is, if you look at our current policy under G, we currently prohibit employees from holding the position of treasurer or handling funds, but this would be more restrictive, that they would not be allowed to be a voting member at all, right? So be a voting member or an officer. And the thought process there, I think, quite frankly, is that oftentimes when those folks are in those positions serving as really volunteer officers, don't know all of the rules around conflict of interest and when to abstain. And so this is attempting to protect our employees from putting their license in jeopardy from an inadvertent failure to abstain or failure to disclose. So I would be in favor of it because I think it protects our folks. The downside is we would have to work with our current organizations to determine what employees are currently voting members and figure out if they resign immediately or if potentially we do this at the end of the school year for next school year and how we can attract folks in that regard.
Can I clarify that?
Yeah.
When we say voting members, we're not just talking about officers.
Correct.
Right, and not only, it is, well,
that's-
there's a greater concern here for me. It's not just voting members and it's not just school employees. It's board appointed or approved, school volunteers. So if you think about the fact that, that is that is the same body, not holistically, but for a large part, those are the same people who, if they're a board approved volunteer, they're volunteering in some capacity in our schools. They're also the ones who are helping run the boosters, who are helping run the PTAs. So I'm all for ensuring that we protect funds and we ensure that conflict of interests are addressed. And I'm concerned that we're going to be setting up our clubs and boosters and PTAs for a very limited number of potential officers and members.
Right. I agree.
Yeah, this I guess wasn't real clear to me because I thought it was talking about you couldn't be like on the board of a PTA, but I didn't realize it was even a member. So we couldn't be even a member of a PTA.
Right,
Well,
I
or
would have
can-
to go resign. I would have to go
or
withdraw
can-
my membership to the Thomas Worthington.
Can you be a member but just not vote? That was the way I read the language, was that you could be a member, you just would have to abstain during voting.
Correct.
Well, and I think that we could further clarify the language. If we're looking at conflicts of interest, those could be abstain on voting on the budget, like where or how the money is spent. Not that, like, for example, we're going to create a morale committee at Thomas, which we're doing right now, to help support the teachers and staff through all of the construction, right? Like, why would, there's not a conflict of interest there. So I think that we could, you're laughing.
I don't know. I'm looking at TJ.
So obviously this policy as drafted is the most conservative version of
Yes.
it.
Right.
I would ask, outside of being the treasurer, how many school employees or volunteers have ever actually been in trouble? Like, I'm not sure we're not protecting ourselves against a potential eventuality that's very low in probability.
Yeah, I think we can reach back out to Neola. I mean, obviously my assumption is that something precipitated Neola making this recommendation. That's an assumption.
Okay, so my takeaway is that this gives many of us the same pause that it gave us on the policy committee, and we will do just that. We will go out and gather more information from Neola, look at different options from a wording standpoint to protect us from a conflict of interest standpoint, but not be so broad that we are tying the hands of our PTAs, clubs, and boosters to not be able to function, essentially. Okay.
I have a slightly different spin on it. Typically, I'm strongly opposed to paternalistic type regulations and rules and laws and so forth. But here, I mean, the big thing for me is not to put into jeopardy anybody's license. And I guess I kind of like the idea of taking proactive steps to avoid getting our employees in a position where they might lose a license. Also, with respect to, they could still be members. It's very common, certainly in the, well, actually the nonprofit arena and in the for-profit arena, for board members who are employees of the organization to be non-voting members. They're members of the board, but they can't vote. And oftentimes that's across the board. It's not limited to just budget or something like that. But they're still they're members, they just aren't allowed to vote to avoid problems of conflict. But
And so perhaps, Charlie, when we're talking about the licensure aspect, we can be more restrictive on the employee side, the school, but maybe we carve out school-based
board-approved
board-approved school volunteers, exactly,
Right.
because that is going
They're not
to
at
cast
risk
a
of losing
very
a license.
wide, exactly, they're not at risk of losing a license, and that is going to cast a very broad net. Okay, let us go back and do some more due diligence on this one then, and come back and address both of those concerns and options for how we balance those two issues. And that takes us to the last one, which is policy 9270. And I am blanking. Kelly, do
So
you?
this is the one where the policy already includes that individuals who are being schooled at home can participate in athletic activities. But the update would be to include also clubs. And so just trying to clarify that information, if that's something that we, and as a district, want to include in the policy.
And do we currently do it? And that's
Yeah, I think we currently do it.
Okay.
And we also let someone who's homeschooled come in just for band, that type of thing. So we have always granted a lot of flexibility with our homeschool families.
Okay. Given that broad application that already exists, then I would say then this would be the first reading as presented to you this evening.
any other comments, questions, or discussion about our first reading?
I just have one clarification. So the policy that we read before this one about the district support organizations, are we taking that, this is or is not the first reading of, it is not?
It is
Okay.
not the first
So
reading.
everything is the first reading except for 9211?
That is accurate.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? All right, if not, we are ready for the reports and announcements section of our agenda. And Dr. Bowers, Superintendent's report, please.
Yes, thank you. So the mission of Worthington Schools is to empower a community of learners who will change the world. And as we did our recognition this evening, you clearly see a group of students who not only will change the world, but maybe are in the process of doing so. So those are the students that we have in Worthington Schools. Pretty cool. So we have 4 vision statements. We break up this report into each of those vision statements. So the first is we will engage each student with diverse opportunities to maximize every student's potential. Just an update that in collaboration with the WEA, the district interviewed and selected new solutions K-12 to complete a comprehensive audit of our special education department. You've heard me speak about this, just want to give an update of where we are. So the project proposal is titled Improving the Workload of Special Education Staff and Outcomes for Students with Disabilities in a Cost-Effective Manner. So looking at it from both a staff and a student lens. Through this partnership, we're working to improve the workload for our special education staff, as well as the effectiveness, the cost effectiveness, and equity of serving students with special needs and other students who struggle. So the work will focus on academics, social emotional learning, and behavior support. We've taken many steps to implement these best practices already as a district, and we are hoping that this work will allow us to fine-tune what are our ongoing efforts. The purpose of this work is to identify opportunities that the district can pursue to continue to raise the achievement of our students who struggle, while also making the work more rewarding and sustainable for staff. We're proud of the quality of service provided to our students and the hard work of our staff who help all children achieve at high levels, with ever higher expectations require us to look for ways to further increase student learning and improve the way we deliver services to our students and the workload of our staff. So this work will serve as an important element of our commitment to improving equity in our school district. So the result, hopefully, of this work will be a better picture of what's working well in the district and where there is opportunity for potential improvements of delivery of services to students and parents, and how the district can better utilize our resources. That's a lot. Okay, so here's where we are. So representatives from New Solutions were on site in July of this year to interview district administrators. They're holding virtual focus group meetings in October, so this month, with regular and special ed teachers, EL teachers, related service, which is occupational therapists, physical therapists, speech psychologists, instructional coaches, parents, and some Board of Education members. A second on-site visit is scheduled for November 1st, so coming up here next month. And we're expecting this final report in winter of 2024. So hopefully after the holidays, we'll have our final report so we can begin to take action for next school year. Our second vision statements will provide a safe environment where every student can grow intellectually, emotionally, socially, and physically. Just a reminder to our community that there is no school on Friday, October 20th, or on Tuesday, November 7th. So on October 20th, all of our support staff will be in the district for their annual Worthington Education Support Professional Learning Day. And then on November 7th, which is our voting day nationally, we're closed to allow voting in our schools, but all of our teaching staff will engage in professional learning on November 7th. So just dates that we want to have on our calendar. Our third vision statements will provide consistent communication and promote dialogue with our community. Hopefully everyone in Worthington received your fall newsletter in the mail last week. Historically, we've mailed 3 newsletters a year in addition to TJ's outstanding PAFR. In an effort to make certain that residents without children are updated on our schools, we've determined that while costly, direct mail is the only way to assure that people get information in a fragmented time without a common newspaper. So we're planning for 7 mailings for this school year. So we've increased our number of mailings really in an effort to make up for that lack of communication without a This Week newspaper out there. So this was the fall newsletter. You should see another newsletter next month. So hopefully everybody's checking their mail. And then fourth, we will be responsible and transparent with our community resources. We applied for and were awarded a grant, a technology grant through the Emergency Connectivity Fund in September of 2021. That was in the amount of $510,000. This was considered round 1 of that fund. In the spring of 2022, they opened a round 3 and we applied. Again, kind of thinking our chances to be awarded were low since we received funds in round 1. We applied again on May 11th, 2022, and then in September of this year, just last month, we learned that we were awarded our application over a year after submitting, but we were awarded for additional Chromebooks for $539,000. So that's good news and good work on Jeff Collett and his team. Over $1 million of grant funds in the last couple of years to support technology in Worthington schools. So, Dr. Wilson, that's my report.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cusick, Treasurer's Report.
Thank you. 2 items tonight. Just a quick update. The monthly financial report for September was posted to the website, distributed to the board. No major variances to note, with the exception health insurance claims continue to be under budget, which is a good thing. It always makes me nervous. We set rates in the fall, and then you have a couple months where you could have really bad months, but we're happy to report that September was not one of them. So we're still trending in the right direction. And then I will just opine that I believe, and I'm certain, folks have received and read the newsletter Dr. Bowers had mentioned, because I received several emails and phone calls regarding reappraisal last week, which was a big article about reappraisal. I spoke to one particular homeowner who was very concerned about the increase in value and the impact on taxes. And so when I entered their valuation into the county auditor's very well done calculator, their valuation was a 10% increase, which is less than the average of about 35. And so that homeowner was actually experiencing a tax decrease. And so I assure you, I did not fabricate the information in that article. That House Bill 920 does exist, and no matter how much we talk about it, people still doubt that, but it does work to reduce the tax rate when reappraisal goes up. Worthington has 4.5 inside mills that they call that does grow, but the rest of our millage will roll back. And this is, I will point out, different than close to 400 districts across the state outside of Central Ohio who are at what they call the 20 mill floor. If you're at the 20 mill floor, then all 20 mills will grow with reappraisal, and that is concerning for those folks. We are not one of those districts, and so we will only get a small amount of growth from that, from our inside mills. That is all.
Thank you very much for a very informative report. Now we're ready for board member reports and announcements. Who wants to go first? Okay, thank you, Kelly.
You're welcome. So I had quite a few meetings since our last time that we were together, so I'm going to try to keep it in order. The day after our board meeting, I attended my first external key communicators group. So I've been to internal key communicators before, but I'd never been to the external key communicator group. And it was early, but that was okay. Traffic was lovely, and it was a really, I think, robust opportunity. So I really am grateful that Dr. Bowers puts that together, and that we get to engage with community members that have students in our district and students who do not have students in our individuals that don't have students in our district. Perhaps their student graduated. So we got a lot of feedback around safety. Obviously, there was a good conversation regarding sports and preparing families for their sport commitment that comes with high school, and how it's different from the commitment from elementary school and middle school. So that was just a really good conversation to have. In the middle of that, we had policy, which we already went over, and then we had internal communicators that same day, where we brought in our educators, and they had also a lot to say, and I have a lot of notes on that. So that's always a good opportunity for them to get feedback, and obviously a good opportunity for Dr. Bowers to be able to share with our educators what's happening, and answer any questions or concerns that they may have. So that was just always a good experience to have. And then my next policy, then I went to Portrait of a Learner. So I missed the first one, but I was able to engage in the second event, and it was really great. I mean, just the number of people that were there was just really wonderful. Colin did a great job facilitating. Angie did a great job facilitating the conversation, and there's just so much. You almost get overwhelmed with all of the information and opportunities that our students have, and just how dedicated our community members are to wanting what's best for our students and wanting them to have the best academic achievement that they can have. So I think that process is going along really great. I'm looking forward to the next one at the end of this month to keep that process going. And the last thing, I was able to fill in to go to the Curriculum Liaison Council meeting, which I'm not on that committee this year, so it was really great to still have the opportunity to go back. And they talked about our continuous improvement plan, which I know that will be presented in November, so I won't give away any spoilers. But again, of course, I have a lot of notes about Ed Steps and the equity gap analysis tool, special education audit, which Dr. Bowers just mentioned, and of course, Portrait of a Learner. So community members are able to come in and hear that information from our AAPL team, and then take that back to their schools to provide information about what we're doing as far as academics in our district, which is phenomenal. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Jennifer?
I do not have any reports, but I just want to thank Kelly for filling in on Curriculum Liaison Council last week. I was not able to attend, and they're always great meetings, so I plan to be at the next one.
Thank you.
That's it.
Nikki?
As Kelly mentioned, we have policy committee, and obviously you guys saw the work of that, so nothing really to expand on that. And then I just wanted to call out and express gratitude. Every month there's often a different history month that is focused in our DEI space, and Toya keeps those updated on her site, and I'm grateful for that. And I would just like to remind everyone that this is LGBTQ plus History Month. Pride is during the summer. It's not during the school year, so we really don't get to celebrate the all of our students and the inclusive and safe space that we provide in our district, which is so incredibly important. So if you haven't done so, I encourage you to take a look at Toya's page on a monthly basis, because I appreciate the fact that you keep us updated on that, and just the work that you do beyond that page to integrate that right into the work that's done in the district. And the whole purpose of LGBTQ plus History Month was that a gay high school teacher, Rodney Wilson, started it in 1994 because he wanted to give hope to LGBTQ plus kids that they would have a chance that he didn't have, and that's to learn their history and see themselves and those that came before them. So along those lines, October was chosen because this Wednesday, October the 11th, is National Coming Out Day. So just an FYI. Thanks.
Thank you. Amy?
Thank you. So I also attended the external key communicators meeting along with Kelly a couple weeks ago, and that was my first time attending that meeting. I think I filled in a few times on the internal one, but never the external one. So we had lots of great conversation. I think Kelly mentioned most of it. We did have some discussion about, not surprising, about questions about construction, and just about, what may be happening over the next couple of years related to that. So then this past Saturday, I was able to attend the Monarch Makers Market, which I know a couple of you also attended, which was really great. It seemed like I got there a little later. It seemed like they had a really great turnout. So it was wonderful to see our community out supporting Sutter Park. This was already mentioned earlier, but I had jotted it down in my notes just about this Wednesday, the big table conversations that Glenn had mentioned about Undesign the Red Line. So I just wanted to mention those again. They're at 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. Also that evening, there is a presentation, Intel on Intel Part 2, that's going to be held at the shops at Worthington Place, and that's at 7 p.m. And then I don't know if we all received, I received an email today about also on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Everything's happening on Wednesday. The Clintonville People First Town Hall. Did anybody else receive that? No? Okay.
Yeah, I may have.
Yeah,
It's
Beth
with-
Liston.
Right, with Representative Liston, House Minority Leader Allison Russo, and Senator Bill DeMora. And so I just was gonna give a mention to that. Obviously, I and we probably can't be all those places on Wednesday evening, but I just wanted to share that those things were all happening. And then one other thing, so Kelly had sent me the Peace Ambassador Program dates, and I think that was maybe also included in Dr. Bauer's email this morning, was it? Or it was somewhere, it was in somebody's email. It was Rob, Rob's raising his hand. So I just wanted to let everybody know that I added the Peace Ambassador dates, the PTAC meeting dates, and the student feedback sessions that we have both for this calendar year and next calendar year on the board calendars that I created, and then also in the Google board calendar for anybody that's using that. So I did go through and update all of those just so that they're on there, which I'm glad I did because I realized I was missing a couple meetings that I hadn't put on my own calendar. So anyways, I just wanted to share that. So thank you.
Thank you. Charlie, is it worth us discussing, you guys, who plans to attend what? Not that we can't go to the same one, but if we are able to spread out and bring back feedback. So we've got Intel on Intel Part 2, We've got the big table discussion. These are all Wednesday, right? And then we also have what Representative Liston sent us today regarding the People First Town Hall on October 11th. And you get, this goes, honestly, I should have brought it up at the same time, but hand in hand with the fact that it's LGBTQ plus History Month, there's a lot of pending legislation that would significantly impact our students in that space. So, when they talk about, they're going to talk about their ongoing efforts to ensure all Ohioans, no matter your race, gender, or economic status, have the freedom to, be who they are and live in dignity in a safe space. I think that I'm assuming they may touch on some educated focus pending legislation. So I am glad to go to that one on Wednesday. If I know that one just came in, if others have plans, and I'd be glad to bring back whatever they share. Is anyone planning to go to Intel or the big table discussion?
I had planned on going to the big table discussion.
Okay.
And that's at the library?
That's at the library.
I had planned to go to Intel.
At the 6 p.m. one, I should say.
Look at that.
But I also was going to try to stop by the library at 6 too, but I wouldn't be able to stay for the whole conversation.
So I was planning on, because actually the town hall came out a few weeks ago, or at least I got an invitation several weeks ago. So I've already RSVP'd for that several weeks ago.
Oh, excellent.
So I was planning on going to that, and I was hoping to go to the 10 a.m. Big table conversation.
Okay, excellent. Well, good. We've got a number of things covered then, so we can come back and share our findings and our learnings. Good.
But I don't know what this Intel presentation will be like. The first one at the MAC was truly eye-opening and very informative. So if you don't, I kind of follow the newspaper, but I had no idea what all was going on. And I would encourage, again, I don't know who's doing, whether it's the same person or whether it's the same
But
format.
this is a separate presentation, right, Amy?
Yeah, it's a separate presentation. I think it is the same person, Betsy,
Okay.
but then with someone else.
She was a good presenter.
That she named a gentleman.
Yeah, and I can't remember who that is at the moment.
Okay.
But yeah, it's a follow-up
Yeah.
of that first presentation with more information because it's such an evolving environment that there's constantly new information. So, but like I said, I plan to attend that, so I'm happy to bring that information back and share it with the rest of you.
Thank you.
So,
Thanks.
I'll probably be at that one too,
okay.
because I'm going to do the red line in the morning.
Okay. Excellent. Good.
All right. Thank you very much. I don't have really anything to add. Kelly did a great job. I was at Portrait of a Learner, and the Curriculum Liaison Council, she did a great job of summarizing. I just want to, guess at 30,000 feet, just say, in my opinion, talking to board members all over the country, our district does a phenomenal job of engaging the community. I mean, these are all community engagement, whether it be external key communicators, Portrait of a Learner. It's just, I think we do not saying there isn't necessarily room for improvement, but it's phenomenal. Secondly, what is phenomenal is how great job our staff does at these presentations. As people know, I'm highly critical and not at other situations, not in this district, but I've cringed about recommending things to people, and I've never cringed after attending something that our administrators have made a presentation of. So again, the presentations are excellent, and I just think the community engagement that we do is truly exceptional. All right, moving now to actions recommended by the treasurer, routine business. Mr. Cusick.
Yes, I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the minutes as presented in enclosure E1. These are the minutes from the 9/18 work session, the September 22nd emergency meeting, and the September 27th regular meeting.
May I have a motion to approve the 3 different meeting amendments?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the 3 separate meeting minutes. Any questions, comments, discussion? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
All right, now actions recommended by the treasurer, new business. Mr. Cusick.
Yes, I'd like to recommend approval of the all-day kindergarten tuition rates for 24-25 as listed in the agenda. This represents no change from the current year. And I'd like to point out that the district charges no tuition for students that qualify for free lunch under the National School Lunch Program.
May I have a motion to approve the recommended tuition rates for all-day kindergarten for the next school year?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I had asked for some additional information, and so I wanted to share it with the board at large. I think it's important to note that we have, obviously this one is not an increase. We've only increased it by $25 since 2015, so that's a good bit of time. And we do have that discounted amount, right? So we don't charge tuition to students who qualify for free lunch. The reduced rate, Charlie, you had actually asked about this as well. Right now, we have roughly 21 students that qualify for the reduced lunch and half-priced tuition, which equates to approximately $33,000 in revenue. We had talked about exploring the opportunity of considering at least whether or not we would want to just not charge any tuition for all-day kindergarten for families that fall within not just the free lunch program, but also the reduced lunch program as well. So those who have, who qualify for reduced lunch, instead of charging them half-price tuition, we would not charge them tuition for kindergarten.
And I would,
Go ahead. No, you're
and I
fine.
would
I
just
just wanted
add
to share that information.
Yeah, it's not directly related, but it would put us, it's consistent with what the state of Ohio did in the budget that passed this June. That is, but here we are getting state reimbursement for that provides for free lunch for every child who qualifies for the federal reduced lunch program. And of course, that doesn't cost the district anything because the state is picking that up. But I would certainly support expanding that. And as Nikki said, 21 students, that's not a very big fiscal impact. But of course, it may, which I don't consider a bad thing, but I want to be fiscally totally transparent, it may increase the number of kids who are in that category who currently do not go to kindergarten all day to go if it's free. So there's no question. I would not be surprised if there's a greater fiscal impact than just 21 students, but I strongly support our doing that, and especially for kids who aren't going. I mean, certainly for the families of those 21 students, but especially for families who simply can't even afford our reduced rate in that category.
So is this a recommendation you're making right now for this school
Are you
year?
making a motion?
This is for next school year?
I wanted to share this information. I don't know, I think I would ask Dr. Bowers if we wanted to make that change, when we would need to do it in order to set the district up to prepare for it, because I think you shared with us also that, Charlie, you've already articulated, we may have an increased number of students that go to all day because they fiscally are in a situation to do that then because they're not being charged. But then the numbers may then impact how many half-day programs we can accommodate from a space standpoint. So knowing that moving one lever impacts several others and not understanding how long you would want or need to account for that, I would ask you if we want to truly consider that change, when you would want us to do so.
Yeah, so I think we have kindergarten capacity for all the students who want kindergarten. If more students in this category chose all day than they did in the past, that would probably require more lotteries than we've had recently. So it wouldn't necessarily be a capacity issue, but it might shift a little bit who we're serving in all-day K versus who doesn't get the all-day K that they might want. But I don't think from a capacity standpoint that we have any concerns. Although, I say that out loud, knowing that kindergarten is always the great unknown of what's coming. But based on what projections are and based on what our recent classes are, we should have the space. I think it would be helpful. So if the board doesn't approve kindergarten numbers tonight, and this is something that you want to look at, I think by the middle of November, it would be it would help us, it would help families to know what the numbers are for next year as they make decisions. We probably open kindergarten registration. Jeff's not here, but we probably open it November 1st-ish. So, next board meeting's even more ideal, but it's not critical because, the average person isn't registering November 1st for next year, right? So, but sometime in the next 6 weeks probably would be beneficial for families so they know when they're signing up next year what the numbers are. For us, knowing this conversation that we're having, I think it's safe to say we know what the tuition cost is going to be. The decision point is, does that impact that reduced category or not? But for the majority, we know what the number is.
So my suggestion, not a motion yet, but my suggestion is that we defer, not table, that we defer this whole item to the next meeting, the October 23rd, to give the administration, the superintendent, the treasurer, to look at what both the physical impact, the enrollment impact would be of doing that. If that doesn't cause, as I heard you, it won't cause problems from a registration, especially if we approve all the rates in 2 weeks rather than 6 weeks. Or
My only problem with that is I'm not here at the next meeting. So, sorry. I don't know, we can, I feel like most of us are pretty aligned philosophically, and, maybe we can have a further discussion now about questions we have, concerns we have, if we're leaning towards it or not. And
well, here's another possibility. Go ahead and amend the motion. We are a legislative body, so we're not bound by stare decisis or precedent. If it turns out that the administration treasurer finds that this is going to be a hardship in any sense, we can always vote to rescind what we voted at the next meeting, vote to rescind what we vote on tonight, and that gets certainty.
I am not comfortable voting without our superintendent and treasurer having a chance to look into this.
well, our treasurer has. That's the information that I shared with you before. So, but I think that maybe the easiest solution then is we just vote in November. And it's, as Dr. Bauer said, it's, by mid-November is reasonable. We won't go beyond that. And I would just encourage us to the extent anyone has questions, I will forward on to the rest of the board what TJ put together related to tuition. And that, TJ, if there's anything else that you feel like you need to share with us, and Dr. Bauer is saying to do so.
The only thing I would mention, you stated the information correctly. When we think in terms of a maximum exposure, right, we don't know how many students would qualify. Typically, in a given year, we have roughly 4 to 5% that qualify for reduced lunch. So in a kindergarten class of 800, that would be maybe 45 students. Right now, we have 21 of them that are attending. So if you think in terms of maximum exposure, maybe another 20 kids would sign up if it was free, would be my projection, if that helps. I don't know.
Nikki, can you repeat the number, or TJ, repeat the number of the cost of the 21 students?
So currently we charge them half, so it's $172.50. So that equates to about $33,000 a year. So in terms of maximum exposure, as I just mentioned, if that were to double, it could be a loss of $66,000 a year. And potentially an increase in a half a staff member if all 21 of those came.
So TJ, what is our current policy? Remind us on other things like athletics and various things that we kind of prorate and differentiate charges, where free lunch might typically be free. What is the reduced lunch typically half price in other things?
No, so typically the fees that we charge are half for reduced eligible students, but in terms of the lunch price, it's, I think, 40 cents on it, as opposed to a lunch, I think, is $3.75 or $3.50, so it's definitely less than half.
Pretty significant, yeah.
Well, I thought, like pay to participate fees,
The participation fees. Okay.
Those are half.
those are half for those, right?
They're half for reduced lunch.
right. And
Okay,
free
so
for-
consistent with all-day kindergarten or.
Right.
What
And
about,
I- Go, no,
what
go
about-
ahead.
what about school fees? Is that true as well?
They are half.
They're half as
They're
well?
half.
Because I guess for me, this goes back to the larger conversation too that Kelly had brought up a while ago that I don't know that we've, and correct me if I'm wrong, if that's circled back in finance or, no, everybody's shaking their head no. Like if that whole conversation has kind of circled back to discussing school fees, this, and how this impacts, right?
Yeah,
So-
and so we could take it up with a larger discussion, absolutely. I will tell you philosophically, as I viewed this, I viewed it a little bit different than pay-to-play fees and whatnot because of the foundation that all-day kindergarten provides our students. So I view it as, you know, it probably has, arguably philosophically has a greater impact. And when we look at our overall budget, these figures are beyond de minimis.
I think it would be accurate to say it more strongly than that. It's not a philosophical, it's evidence-based that all-day kindergarten, especially for lower income families, is critical for setting the base for thriving in kindergarten. One of many things, but.
So would it be fair for us to come back with like a financial analysis for reduced price for kindergarten? But it also sounds like a financial analysis for fees, whether it be pay to participate and school fees, like in that reduced category. Like if we know that 4 to 5% of our student population's in that reduced category line item, what would that breakout be? TJ can send that to the Board of Education and so that you all have equal knowledge on that. This one is more pressing than like the other conversation is a spring conversation, but it may inform your decision making on this as well. And I don't want to speak for TJ on how quickly he can do that, but probably it's pretty quick because I don't think it's a real complicated analysis. So.
Yeah, we can have it back. I don't know if this muddies the water further, but there has been discussion at the State House, requests for feedback and proposals for mandating all-day kindergarten. So it may become a moot point at some point.
That muddies the water a lot.
A little.
And
I
honestly,
thought about bringing that up too.
well, I mean,
decided not
so
to.
we have capacity for that right now. Just so you know, because we did an analysis. Now it was kind of a back of a napkin, so I don't want to hold, because we didn't, but we think we have capacity for that. However, the major shift change would be is we wouldn't be offering half-day anymore. And we do have a number of families that like us to offer the half-day option. And so we attempt to offer a half-day option at every one of our schools. And there are plenty of families that just choose that half-day option. And so the convert, like many of us might say all-day kindergarten for kids is a positive. However, there will be many of our families that say, whoa, 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 that's different than what I wanted for my child because
But if I understand the discussion, we're not talking about mandating that. That might be a
well,
state
we're not
mandate.
talking exactly.
Right.
Thank you, Charlie, for clarifying. That's not our discussion
Right.
right now. However, the legislation that was put forward that potentially muddies the water is that. But if that happens, that's more. We feel like we could be prepared for that. It wouldn't. But separate from this conversation, right now we're planning to move forward as we have with the tuition-based all-day kindergarten program. The question kind of moving forward is, do we modify that reduced price to something different than it is right now? So
And so one of the issues is the next board meeting after our November 23rd one isn't until the third Wednesday of November, November 15th, because of Capitol Conference. So I want to make sure that I heard everybody heard Dr. Bowers accurately, that while it would be an inconvenience, we can survive with uncertainty
I think
about.
November 15th is fine.
Just for the record, I will not be here November 15th, but I can get you all the information to make that decision.
Okay.
TJ, we have to coordinate our schedule.
We trust Brian.
Okay, so I would at this time entertain a motion to delay consideration of all-day kindergarten tuition until November 15th.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that?
And it's not that I don't agree, it just, like, obviously Nikki and Charlie have spent some time on this, and when you make a decision like this, I would rather take a minute to look at all the information before making a
Absolutely.
decision.
No, appreciate that.
And
I absolutely agree with that. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not opposed
right.
to this. I just would like to have a little
Right.
more information. Right.
I didn't assume we were voting on it today. I also didn't think about the next meeting. I was not here. Kelly gave me that eye.
And this will surprise nobody who follows my 17 years here. I've always voted against all fees because I philosophically believe that public education ought to be as close to free as possible. But I'm also a believer in half a loaf. So going to free for students who are eligible for free reduced lunch would certainly cause me to vote for this. But for what that's worth. All right, let's. What did you want to say something, Dr.?
No, I was just getting ready for
All
that.
right. Would you please call? Okay, so we got a motion here. I'll make sure everybody's had a chance to communicate that we are going to delay our consideration of the treasurer's recommendation with respect to all-day kindergarten tuition rates until the November 15th meeting. That's the motion. I believe it's been seconded. Any other discussion? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes. Motion passes. This will come back on the budget, on the agenda on November 15th, presumably. It will be the treasurer's recommendation again, which as a board, we are free to accept, reject, or amend. All right, Dr. Bowers, personnel consent agenda.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, items G2 through G10. Again, the recommendation is the consent agenda, items G2 through G10, please.
So moved. Oh,
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the personnel agenda G2 through G10. Any discussion, questions? If not, Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes. All right, Dr. Bowers, actions recommended by the superintendent, new business.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the motion to accept the donations from the individuals and organizations that are listed on H1 of the agenda. H1, please.
We have a motion to accept the donations listed in H1 of the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions? If not, Dr. Bowers or Mr. Cusick, would you please call the roll on the motion to approve, accept the donations?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Motion passes. All right, now we have a action recommended by the Board of Education to authorize the registration of Kelly, Amy, and myself to attend the OSBA Black Caucus Dinner at the Capitol Conference. Does anybody else want to be added to it? Okay, may I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the recommendation of the Board of Education with respect to registration at the Black Caucus Dinner. Any comments, questions? And again, it's always been our practice, and it was done, I think it was before Sarah Clark, actually. former student of mine, but who is the OSBA counsel, that this does not pose a conflict and it's good practice for people not to abstain on this, to go ahead and vote on this. All right, Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Motion passes. Are there any concerns, questions, requests from the board? Seeing none, we're ready for the calendar. And again, next meeting is regular time, regular place on October 23rd. And then, because there are 5 Mondays in October, we will have 2 Mondays in between, and even more than that, because of the Capitol Conference, we will not be meeting on our normal second Monday of the month in November, but on the third Wednesday in November, November 15th, again, same time, same place. We will have we will have a presentation on what Kelly was talking about, the education steps plan, steps 1 plan, and it's something that at some point, I don't know if it's gonna be that night, but we do state, or Ohio Department of Education requires that we vote on it, but there's no deadline as to when we vote on it, as I understand it, okay? And so that will be the November 15th meeting. Then our second meeting in November will be back at the 4th Monday of the month. That will be right after Thanksgiving, I believe, if I've got that right. So it'll be the Monday after Thanksgiving. All right, and there, Mr. Cusick's going to do a presentation on the 5-year forecast. All right, any other? Okay, any issues on that? Okay, at this time I'd entertain a motion to enter into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. We enter into executive session. It's not a debatable motion. Mr. Cusick, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mrs. Best?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Okay, the board will now be going into executive session. You are certainly free to hang around. We are required by state law to come out of executive session and come out and vote to adjourn, because we can take no votes in executive session. But I guarantee you, we will not discuss anything in public after the executive session. I guarantee you there'll be no votes, but you're certainly free to hang around. Okay, just to make sure we don't do that. But no, we will not be coming out of executive session for the purpose of voting on things substantively or even discussing anything substantively. All right, thank you very much. And we're headed to executive session now.